You're now listening to the Zod and Drea podcast.
Check 1 2 1 2. We're back.
Hello.
Once again. We are here on another episode.
And this is the best episode, I think, so far.
So far, I think so.
Uh-huh.
How can it be any better?
I don't know. Even though it hasn't happened yet, but it's
Hasn't
gonna be
happened
the
yet.
best.
Trust me, it's the best one. We're going to have a couple of guests here who are going to help us try to come to a conclusion to a question that I'm sure is on a lot of people's minds, especially after this election that was so racially divisive. So the question of the week is going to be, how can America heal a racial divide after such a racially divisive election?
And and people, you got to be honest. This really was a divisive past, I want to say maybe 14, 16 months.
Yeah, it was ridiculous.
And, what do we do now? I know for myself, it was tough after the election. And it was the space of just, I'm unfamiliar. I don't know what to do with these emotions. So we're going to talk about it.
And we're going to talk about it with none other than Chris Love.
What?
And Cassie Chilton. What up? So Cassie is in case nobody knows, Cassie is the co-founder of the Arizona chapter of the Pantsuit Nation.
That's right.
It's right, and which has now reached what?
Over 9,000?
Over 9,000 people.
Fantastic.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
And in part of that, there are different subcommittees that are in that organization.
Yes.
And one of them is the Black Outreach subcommittee.
Mm-hmm.
And Chris Love is a co-founder of that, along with me.
I was about to say, I have a co-chair here.
Oh, don't worry. You got a camera right there.
Oh.
So we're both in it together, and we decided to have this, what can be a controversial conversation, but, it's one thing to do things online, which, we've seen you guys. I mean, if anybody is a member of any of the Pantsuit Nation, Arizona, or of the Black Outreach, you'll see these guys kind of battling it out in the beginning, but it was an intellectual battle of minds, emotions, and how to resolve things, which basically the election brought out of all of us. So, I mean, where do you think you stand now compared to where you were post-election, like right after the election? Cassie?
Oof. Right after the election, I mean, I, like many people, was crying an awful lot that night. I just could not believe that's how things turned out. I believe it. I see the divide in our country, but I just had such higher hopes. So I was pretty devastated, but the next morning is when I started messaging people and figuring out, well, how can we harness, everyone's going to be so upset and so angry and so sad. How do we harness that momentum and turn it into something that's going to be good for our state in the next 4 years? How do we fight that in our state?
Yeah.
So we're on that path. It's a slow path. It's hard to organize so many people and so many ideas, but I'm hopeful for our state. I'm scared for our country. That's kind of where I'm at.
I think many people can agree with you on that feeling, and I just want to acknowledge that you took this on. It's not like you're just sitting around your house and got nothing else to do. You've got a life, you've got a career, you volunteer.
School, which she should be at right now.
Right, and you've taken time out to not only meet with us today, but to spearhead this and really gather everyone that wanted to do something, and not only just the people, but even their emotions. It was a very emotional time, and you got everybody together to at least try to focus on their energy into something to be more positive. So I commend you on that.
Thank you. Thanks.
And Chris, I mean, where do you think this is headed now that you're part of a subcommittee? You've lived this. So what we've been through, or what Cassie may be experiencing now, or seeing with different glasses, we've seen our entire lives. It's a different experience for us. We're like, oh, that's it? Oh yeah, this is Wednesday. You know, this is
Yeah,
this
that
is no-
SNL skit was, I mean, it's laughable how accurate it is that, like, America really is racist. I think
Oh,
a
yeah,
lot
yeah,
of-
yeah, yeah.
a lot of us found ourselves there.
So what do you
some
think?
of us knew, you know, and post-election, I worked the poll on election day, and I was kind of oblivious to some of the things that were going on with regard to the reporting of, you know, the results and everything. And so when I got home and realized what was happening, it was just like, I knew it could happen, and I kind of expected it to happen, but that didn't stop me from being as disappointed as I was. And I literally, I called in black the next day, you know, I called my boss and I was like, girl, I can't. And, you know, I was for about 4 days, I was literally just like, I don't even want to walk outside of my house. But then I had a board meeting that I had to go to, and during that meeting, they took an hour for everyone to kind of process what they were feeling. And at that point, you know, I'm in a room and I'm the only black person in the room, and there are a handful of Latinas there with me. And it was just listening to all of the white people in the room kind of processing this and being very weepy and not understanding what was happening. And I got mad. I got up and walked out of the room. I literally was like, I cannot listen to any more of this, because, you know, this is, you know, they're talking about what are they going to tell their students, or what are they going to tell, you know, their neighbors' kids. But I'm like, this is me. You know, this is happening to me.
Right
what am I
now,
going
at
to
this
tell
moment.
you know, myself? You know, what am I going to tell my husband? What am I going to tell my children? You know, how can I, you know, leave the house and feel safe at this point? And then the next experience I had was literally going to the grocery store. And there were some men from the VFW kind of ringing bells and everything to collect money. And I walked by him with my 2-year-old daughter, and he was like, well, welcome to Trump's America.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you know what? You know, things like that make me feel scared. But then I was like, I can't. I'm not going to live in fear. I'm going to harness my anger to do something, but I'm not. I refuse to live in fear. I'm not scared of Donald Trump.
And it's crazy to me because there's a segment of America, and I guess it would have to be especially those who claim to be Christian white men who have been waiting for this. It's like, oh, we've been waiting. Like, finally we have someone who speaks for us. You know, all the things he said about Mexicans and Muslims and blacks and what Pence is going to do to gay people and all this. It's like, finally we have a voice. And, I mean, you see that Richard Spencer guy. You know, I mean, we had that conversation that we had last week where, you know, it's like Hail Trump, which sounds a lot like Heil Trump. Mm-hmm. And, you know, they're putting up, you know, Sieg Heil signs. It's like, is this the America? I mean, Cassie, do you think, is this the America that was hidden underneath us the whole time? I mean, we've seen it. Like, I've seen it you can see it in comment sections all over the place. But
Yeah.
have you been privy to things like this, maybe in conversation that you hear from people when people of color aren't around? And, like, do you hear things like this?
I honestly, one of the slogans from the campaign was the silent majority, and I thought that was so laughable. Mm-hmm. And, I mean, that's naive of me, but I thought, no, we see stories on the news. I see hateful comments on the internet, but I guess I just think that can't possibly be how the majority thinks. I thought of it as like, doesn't Obama call them clingers? I thought it was like a dying out. You know, I thought like, you know, one day they'll be gone, and it's soon. Like they're leaving. But I didn't. I mean, foolishly, I did not realize that it was so prominent.
And I think that, you know, we need to be careful about that, because I think, you know, my hope is that, you know, the majority of people are with us, right? The problem is that the majority of people don't vote.
Yeah.
And such a small segment of this
40%?
country, right, gets to pick the leader. And, you know, it's a small segment, and the Republicans just did a bang-up job, you know?
They did it in the Rust Belt.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yep.
they promised them what they can't deliver, but they still talked to them about jobs,
Yeah.
which Hillary stopped
I don't think.
talking about.
I think she got more on the defense.
Yeah.
You know, every time then the Trump campaign or he tweeted something against her, her campaign was too busy trying to defend what he said.
Yeah, we were
instead
talking to
of
a friend
talking
about that yesterday. It was like he was more anti-Trump as opposed to pro-jobs, or I'm Hillary and this is the jobs that I'm going to get to you. And in a,
Well, I mean, but even when she did that kind of thing, people weren't listening.
They weren't believing.
It was, you know, this election more than any other election I've seen, and I think I voted for Bill Clinton the first time he ran, right? more than anything else, it was about the cult of personality sort of thing, and it was based on the fact that people so have this visceral hatred of Hillary for whatever
why?
reason.
Like, right?
And I mean, I've had
deep.
and I've had my issues with her, and I've been very clear about the fact that I did not like the racial politics that she played in 2008.
Of course.
I was bitter about that shit.
Yeah,
I'm not
look at
gonna
Barack
lie.
Obama too, yeah.
But when it came down to it, I mean, I was a Hillary voter.
Yeah.
And it was because I felt like, regardless, she was the most qualified person to do the job.
Ever.
She's been,
we've ever
battle tested. Hillary has been around for a long time, and they've thrown everything that they can at this woman, and still she persevered, right? So, I mean, that's the kind of character that we need for someone that's going to lead this country. Do I have problems with some of her policies? Do I have some problems with some of the things that she said prior to the election? Of course I do. But no presidential candidate is perfect. I mean, even Barack, I love him. Even Barack isn't perfect all of the time. And as people of color, we are always forced to choose between the candidates that may not necessarily speak to our concerns, but we've got to do what's best for the nation and what's best for our communities. And Hillary was that. I mean, our other option was Trump. So
It's I mean, I agree completely, but now it's looking at what do we do, and again, I'm at that phase of like, okay, what do we do to prepare so that this way the next 4 years aren't just a downward spiral.
Well,
and I have to admit too, when it came to, I was really shocked to see how low amount of voters came out. I mean, this was a huge campaign. This was really such a turning point for what's going to be happening in SCOTUS, what's going to be happening for all of the major laws that took 20 years to pass to get some progression going. And
I mean,
it
it can last for about 40 years, they say. I mean, by the time the youngest one, gets up and is going to wind up leaving the bench, where they can finally, put in another SCOTUS. But what I want to know, Cassie, is with the Pantsuit Nation, what do you see on there with the women there that you can even identify with, or even just from a distance? What is it that you think that they're trying to solve out of now a post-election divide racially, but also sexually, anti-Muslim? I mean, what do you see them wanting to do with their mission?
It's interesting. I can speak from a leadership standpoint. We want the group to be an intersectional group. We want the group to be a place that is a safe place for all voices, that is a place for people to feel represented. Has it become that yet? Not quite. I think we've made little baby steps. We're trying, but it is interesting to see in the group people who I think at their heart want the same thing, but they see any kind of conflict as, well, you're fighting against the cause and we don't have time for that. And it's been really interesting.
You've both seen it from both angles.
And it's been frustrating, I think, for everyone to see, and I'm seeing it from different perspectives, seeing it from a leadership perspective and then seeing it from just these individual conversations I'm having with people. It's interesting to see how people I honestly feel they have the best intent, but to see them be so dismissive of the idea of embracing diversity and being an intersectional group. And that's what it's going to take to heal that divide, I think, in part. Obviously, that's a really big question, but...
So we got 1 minute left before the break. Did you want to ask a question?
I think, and this might be something we can carry over into the next, after the break, is when you talked about how the delivery, everyone has good intentions, but yet when it's time to approach how that delivery has been so far and that execution, when it's really kind of almost been a reflection of really where that person's motives have been and how that's affected the progression of Pantsuit Nation and how it'll go further.
Well, I will say something that has become really apparent to me is that inherent bias of, I don't mean to offend here, but that inherent bias of the angry black woman, I see it on the thread. I see a woman of color says something, a white person gets very defensive, very argumentative. A fellow white person says almost the exact same thing, word for word. oh, that makes so much sense. Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for explaining that. And I mean, I see it because I'm monitoring all of these threads, and it's crazy.
And that's how it is. So, we'll be right back.
Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Zod.
And I'm Drea.
And we want you to check out the Zod and Drea podcast every Tuesday.
Where can everybody find us at?
You can always check us out on www.zodanddrea.com.
Where else?
You can always check us out also on Facebook at Zod and Drea.
Instagram?
Zod and Drea.
Snapchat?
Zod and Drea.
YouTube?
Zod and Drea.
I see a pattern.
I see a pattern. So if you haven't caught that, catch us at Zod and Drea on all the social networks. But also, make sure you subscribe to the Zod and Drea podcast. Where?
At zodanddrea.com.
And also on YouTube and iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and iHeartRadio. We're coming for you.
Let us know what you think. And if you want to be a guest, reach out to us.
And put all of your input into whatever our topics are for the week. So we hope to check you out and see you there.
Bye. And we are back.
Yeah, we're back. Okay, once again. Now, I wanted to ask a real quick question. Oh, no. Actually, let's continue on with your question. Then I want to go ahead and...
So, again, Cassie, if you want to continue on, we were talking about the how addressing for women that are not of any ethnicity background, understanding a woman of color, when a black woman is expressing then their concern to the community about what to progress forward, or any woman of color, and how that's being received then from women that don't have that experience, and how you're be able to engage that with Pantsuit Nation.
It's been really wild to kind of see it all play out, to see how a woman of color can post an article or a message that she's written, and it does come from a place of anger, because women of color have every right to be angry. I mean, you can't get around that, but to see people comment in response and be like, oh, I hear you, but could you just say it in a nicer way, maybe? Is like,
We've gotten
really
that
No.
ever.
I know. I mean,
story of my life.
I know these terms exist, but I've never seen it play out in such a textbook way. And so now I get messages all day from women who are offended and their feelings are hurt, and well, I'm not a racist and that hurt my feelings. And it's funny because I've only been on the receiving end of it for maybe a couple days. I think I messaged Brent recently. I was like, white fragility is a real thing.
Amen.
And I am tired answering these
Amen.
messages. So I cannot imagine how tired women of color are. So when we ask, well, can you just teach us? Can you just show us? Can you just explain it in a nicer way? Well, I'm seeing now, like, that is exhausting. And I've only been doing it for a couple weeks.
Yeah, here's two examples right here. Women of color who have experience going through that. I had posted something in the Black Outreach group today about a man who was beaten up by cops. He was a corrections officer, and he was beaten up by cops. And I mean, just the tears that were coming from him, and his frustration and his experience. And it's like, this is America, and he just can't get over it. And I'm telling people, this is how we feel on the inside all the time.
Every single day.
Every day we feel like that, but we can't. We always have to, we have to be the tough macho and make sure that we don't show fear. And so we always have to come off a certain way so that you don't see or feel that, but we feel that. Like, we can probably at any point talk about a discussion or something and cry.
Right.
Like, I mean, if we let our guards down, you take us to a movie like, The Butler or 12 Years a Slave, or, and we emote with that. We touch with that. We can wind up just crying because we feel that 250 years ago, but we still feel it. It's
Well, I mean, it's not even 250 years ago, right? It's every day. It's the vestiges of slavery. And the fact that people need us to kind of package our feelings in a way that makes them feel comfortable is angering. Number one, because it's like, come on now. Didn't you all see the same thing that we saw with this election? Why aren't you angry too? Like, why have you not hit that point that we've been at for, look, I've been alive for 39 years, right? Why is it taking folks so long to hit that point?
because think about it. They will see something in 4K, with audio that's crystal clear on a camera phone of a cop or somebody beating up a black guy, and they won't have any emotion. It's like, well, he must have done something wrong. So it's like the same apathy that they have is going to keep continuing on. I mean, we're talking about people who've been attacked by police dogs and in black and white footage, back that we can remember when camera. I mean, and then you keep going back. Like the apathy is there until now, where it's crystal clear. They're not gonna feel bad. You know, it's gonna take something like that.
I don't think it's necessarily that people don't feel bad, but it's that we have the ability to walk away.
Absolutely.
I mean, I
Great
think
point.
most people, you know,
Yep.
if their hearts are in the right place or if they have the right intentions, they'll watch a video and they'll be sad, and I'll, you know, watch a movie and they'll be sad and they'll empathize and, oh, that's terrible. But at the end of the day, we have the privilege and the luxury that if it gets too hard and messy for us, we can go, well, okay, I tried.
Did you see what Ann Coulter had written on
I
her
mean,
on her
that's the
Twitter?
reality.
No,
No.
touching that, where it was something like, oh well, it looks like Trump is falling back on his promises. It's like, oh well, you know, we tried. It's not our fault. It's that.
Oh, I
it's
hate
it's that
her.
exact same. It's like, yeah. You're not gonna wind up hurt by this, but there are
No.
millions of others who will, who are directly affected.
Well, yeah, and that's a conversation that I feel like I keep on having over and over again on Pantsuit Nation. It's the, well, I'm not a racist, and when you categorize lump all white people together, then that's problematic. That just puts back progress. And my response is always like, please tell me when lumping all white people together has led to the consequences of, you know, people
Right, usually
dying,
lumping all white people together leads to good things
in
for us.
America,
That's the
like
reality.
in our history, in American history, lumping white people together and generalizing white people has always had some benefits for them. It's a detriment to us as people of color, but I mean, it's a benefit to them. And so the worst thing that happens is hurt feelings. And if that's the worst thing that
That's
you
it.
have to think about,
I wish.
then get out of my face with that. I don't have any time
Yeah.
for that.
It's
It's
funny
like,
you said that. It's almost like, how many times have you heard black on black crime?
oh Jesus,
How many times have you heard white on white crime?
never.
Never.
Right?
You know, it's that type of a racial divide where it's like, you know, that's all you guys do, but it's like actually statistically, it's actually pretty similar in the numbers.
Well, yes, because you know people commit crimes in the communities that they live in,
Right.
right? So it makes sense, but people just want to racialize the hell out of black folks and people of color all the time and attribute these horrible things to us that exist in the same ways in white communities.
Same way.
I just had a conversation with somebody the other day about who's also white and was trying to understand why, for the Latino community, say the Latinos that are born here in the United States, why they're offended, why they're afraid. They don't have anything to worry about. They're not going to be deported. And explaining to them, like, you don't understand. We all are immigrants. How can you just target one group and say, first of all, your home country should pay for you to not even be in this country, to pay for a wall, and we're going to deport you, and you have to come back the right way. Like Santorum was on CNN 2 days ago in that open forum, which was horrible, which was a woman who came to the United States from Mexico when she was 7 years old. So you don't have a say. You know, you're a child. You don't have a say in what's going on in your life. And it wasn't until she was a senior in high school that she understood what was going on with her legalization, and knew at that time and was told, yeah, you can go back to Mexico if you want to go through the immigration process that was offered to her at the time, but you couldn't come back in 10 years. I mean, you cannot come back in 10 years, and that's if you come back.
I mean,
So how
Santorum was
do-
so dismissive.
He was
Well,
so
because he's a
dismissive.
subhuman person. Let's be real about that.
Yeah.
Rick Santorum
He's an
is
ass clown.
he's
That's what he
horrible.
is.
But I think that the part of the problem is that people of color aren't viewed as human, right? Our humanity is
When we
commodity.
came in, we were 3/5 of a man.
right,
And described as property. I mean,
right. And we only got 3/5 because they wanted some population for voting purposes, right? So we weren't really
We weren't really
3/5, right?
on
We were
paper.
right. So I mean, that stuff. It just tugs at me, right?
It hurts. And so I asked this person, what do you think then economically is going to happen to this country if there is a mass deportation of anyone that has any ties to Mexico? You know, say goodbye to your Taco Tuesdays.
can't go.
I would really be sad about that. by the way.
Oh,
I love
My
a
favorite
taco,
restaurant.
right?
Cinco de Mayo.
You know,
Right.
goodbye. Who's going to take care of your kids? Who's
Right.
going to
Clean
clean
up
your
offices and your
Who's
hotels.
gonna pick your fruit?
Yeah.
Who's gonna
Pick your fruit.
supply
Good
your
luck.
Walmart? Who's
Good
gonna
luck.
do
Who's
all
gonna
of
They don't think that
package your-
because Brad and Chet are not going to do that.
Yeah.
Right. And neither is Chris, for that matter.
Right? You're not going to see
Dated
me
Brad
doing
and
it.
Chet.
So it's like it going to have to take that? Is it going to have to be an economic strain and a shock for people to understand that this is not a policy that should be in place, and stop hating anybody from any other country, because again, this country was not founded by the white Aryan nation. Sorry.
Right.
I know. I think that is like the reality, though. Until it's impacting people's lives directly, I don't know what it's going to take. But I mean, I fear that's the reality, is that it's going to take until white people are feeling the hit from these policies for them to go, wait a minute, this isn't a good idea. This isn't working.
But even still, I feel like there's so much blindness and so much, just willful blindness about the topic that people are going to find a way to blame immigrants anyway, right? No matter what, it's going to be somebody else's fault besides Donald Trump and his policies at this point. And this is what we really need to prepare for in the upcoming election in 2 years, in 4 years, is how to kind of counteract some of that stuff, because these people wholeheartedly believed in the stuff that Trump was saying, but more importantly, they're invested in white supremacy, right?
Yeah,
and so white supremacy isn't going to say, well, it was our guy. No, they're going to point the fingers back at people of color.
It's going to be Obama's fault for a minute.
Right. Always is.
Right.
Well, we've got a few minutes left, and you bring up a good point then. So what do we do to then...
how do you heal the divide?
How do we heal the divide and make some things move and happen then? So
because it's got to be beyond safety pins. I'm gonna tell you that right now.
Don't even get me started on that.
That's why I didn't bring it up earlier.
Right.
That's a whole other.
I have so much. Right. How do we heal the divide? That is the question, and the divide is 250 years long, right? And so I feel like we're just moving into another period of that. It was slavery, then it was Reconstruction, then it was Jim Crow, then it was the Civil Rights Movement, then it was the craziness of the 80s, and then it was, so I think that we're just moving into another thing that looks like the divide.
And that's only the black side. Don't forget the natives, which was even before that.
And and I hate to do that. Right.
And they're at Standing Rock right now, still fighting.
Right. And I hate to do that. And someone checked me on that the other day, so I have to be very clear that when we talk about race, it's not just a black and white issue. It's not a dichotomy. Right. I'm talking about what I know, because I'm just black.
Black as hell. So what do you see, Cassie? What do you see as a healing moment?
The biggest thing that I'm seeing just on the Facebook group alone is that it's going to take white people.
Yes.
It's going to take white people who are willing to listen and do some educating of themselves, not putting the strain on people of color to spell it out for them, so that they are able to advocate properly. And it's going to take us fighting for causes that even though it's not directly impacting us now, that it's for the betterment of the country. And that's hard. It's hard to get people to motivate and organize, but that's what it's going to take. I truly believe it can't continue to be minorities fighting for their own rights, because they're minorities. Nobody
listens
more
to us.
The fact that we have to fight for our own rights.
We need more people.
Right.
We need
getting out of the comfort zone. Getting out of your little comfort.
Like, can't you just
environment?
Give
Put the Starbucks
me
just
my rights.
listen and just
give me my rights.
Right. But
Is that okay?
But how about people just fucking listen for a second, right? And let me tell you how white supremacy works. Okay. Okay. Well, 18 seconds. White supremacy is I'm 39 years old. I've got 2 degrees. I've studied critical race theory. I'm a practicing attorney. And when I say something, I know what I'm talking about. And to be challenged by women who've heard of these things for 5 seconds and don't know anything, that's just crazy. Because all white opinions matter. It's not my opinion that matters, even though I'm educated. It's everybody else's opinion that matters.
All right. We're going to have to leave it there.
Oh, so much to talk about.
See, I told you, over glasses of wine and some cookies, some crackers.
We about to have tacos, y'all.
We're about to have Taco Tuesday over here at the Zod and Drea podcast.
And Taco Thursday.
Taco Thursday, boy. Too bad for you. You won't be able to eat it with us. But, we'd really love to thank Chris Love.
Yay!
Woo! And Cassie Chilton for coming here on the Zod and Drea podcast. And of course, where can they find us, babe?
Oh my gosh, we're on Facebook.
What?
We're on I mean, we're everywhere.
YouTube, Instagram, Snapchat.
you
Where
name it.
aren't we? So make sure you check us, and hopefully we'll have these two back to talk about this. And,
Tell us your thoughts.
Tell us your
thoughts.
all right.
The war on terrorism. I will bring all the troops home. All of them. Because I've been there. I was over there. I did 2 tours over there. And we've been over there.
A recent study showed that there is actually a decrease in the rate of teenage use of cannabis. So as much as there is a theory that, it's going to pass and a lot more teens are going to start smoking, actually the opposite.